Yeah, as I've been saying, I've been talking about runic equipment a lot. Basically, in the tabletop, in the fluff, it's just magic equipment. But in the tabletop, dwarf lords and like banners can be imbued with runes. Now, this is different to other races because other races have a set of equipment which they can choose from. So, say like they have a lord that can have 100 points of equipment, they can choose a sword of like 50 points and armor of like 25, and then like a necklace for like 25 points. But this equipment set, they've only got like a choice of like 3 or 4 weapons, 3 or 4 armor, and they have to choose one of these generally. Dwarfs differ in this. They have runes. Now there are rules governing this runes. Like I can't have more than 3 runes on a piece of armor or a piece of weapon. That's called the rule of 3. You can't have more than 3 runes. There's the rule of form, which only weapon runes can be put on weapons, armor runes on armor, exactly, etc., etc. That's pretty standard. Obviously, that makes sense, but some people have tried to abuse that on the tabletop if it wasn't there. The rule of pride, which means I'm pretty sure no 2 pieces of equipment can have the same set of runes on them. They will always have to be different. The only exception to this is the rune of iron, I think. No, the rune of stone. Yes, the rune of stone. Because the rune of stone is just a basic buff to the armor, so you can have as many runes of stones as you want across the battlefield, basically, as long as the person can equip runic armor. Only 1 master rune can be put on a piece of equipment, and you can only use that master rune per army. So you can't have 2. You can't have like say like the master rune of Gromril on 2 different lords on the same army. You can't have it. They're just that powerful in the fluff. They're that powerful. You can't combine them on the same item. The item just explode, and you can't use them in the same battlefield because they interfere with each other, I think. So that's the rules on runes. Now this is why I fell in love with the dwarves. It's the combinations. So I think will go into basically a brief overview of how dwarves are played. Basically, you've got multiple ways you can play a dwarf army. Now, the most common way of playing the dwarfs is known as the gun line, which is basically a lot of crossbowmen, cannons, organ guns. Basically, it's crossbowmen because you don't use the riflemen, the thunderers, in tournaments most of the time. Some people do. Personally, I don't, because crossbows have further range than the rifles by 6 inches, I think it is. So they shoot further. So generally, you don't have to move, you guys. You can just start firing straight away if you decide to take a gun line. The only benefit the rifle has is that they're the same strength, but the rifle has armor piercing, which means it takes 1 more off the person's armor. Now, the reason I don't like taking them is because, what would you guess? The runesmiths have a buff where when they join a unit, they increase the armor piercing value of their weapons by 1. That means if you put them in a crossbow unit, not only do they give that unit magic resistance against light magic resistance against people casting magic at them, it also means that their crossbows are now armor piercing, which means you've now got a 30-inch range instead of a 24-inch range rifle. So they're exactly the same as thunderers when it comes to the damage they'll do at range, but they shoot 6 inches further. The other thing I don't really like taking thunderers for is because the only option they've got is to take shields with their hand weapons. Now, I'm a believer of dwarfs should pretty much always take great weapons in this edition because they're always going to strike for last anyway because they have the lowest initiative ever. They got initiative 2, except for like the characters. So they're always going to strike last. So I got the philosophy: if you're going to strike last, strike fucking hard. So I always get great weapons. Now crossbows can take great weapons. That's the other reason. So that's what I take in my core. I also take longbeards, not warriors. Now I've experimented with both this is for tournament play, not for fluff. I've experimented with both. You can get a lot more bodies for warriors than you can for longbeards. But the downside is that warriors are not immune to psychology, and they don't have the small effect of basically giving units a second chance at panic tests. On top of that, dwarf warriors have one less strength at strength 3, and one less weapon skill at weapon skill 5. Now, when you're fighting hardcore armies like Chaos, have a weapon skill 5 and base strength 4, because like I said, I always take great weapons. So a Longbeard, it's actually strength 6. Now, strength 6, that's 4, 5, 6. That's minus 3 to armour. I usually have a runesmith in one of my units of Longbeards. That's minus 4 to armour. That fucks generally anything up that's got armour. And I like to fuck shit up. So that's why I take Longbeards to tournaments over Dwarf Warriors. Even though I have taken Warriors before when I was first started going, I thought maybe more is better. More wounds in the unit is better, because you can take like 30 dwarfs, say, rather than 30 Dwarf Warriors compared to like 24 or something like that. Maybe more, maybe less. I can't remember the actual comparison now. But like 24 Longbeards. But I found that the 24 Longbeards will stay in combat longer, and do more effective, be more effective in combat than the Dwarf Warriors. That's what I found. Other people might argue that fucking 8 points for a Dwarf Warrior is much more efficient than 12 points for a Dwarf Longbeard, but no, I prefer Longbeards. That's how I roll. So on my core, I usually, because gunlines will only take quarrelers, because they want as many shots out as possible. They'll take a cannon, they'll take grudge throwers, basically all the range they can possibly hammer in, and they'll have a couple of gyrocopters as well, because gyrocopters are good at redirecting units and cock blocking units from charging your guys with crossbows. You want them to keep on firing for as long as possible. You put a gyrocopter in the way so they can't get charged and get stuck in close combat. Now, I don't like playing dwarves like that, and to me, a person that plays gun lines pretty much exclusively doesn't know how to play dwarfs. They have no experience. They're not a very good commander. Now, people always go on about the movement phase and how important it is, and people always go, "Oh, dwarfs only have free movement. They have got no cavalry, nothing like that. Movement's not important for dwarfs. They can fuck right off." Movement to me is much more important to a dwarf than say an elf. Because we've only got that 3-inch movement, we don't have cavalry, we don't have the maneuverability. If we make a mistake in the movement phase, it's fucked. You're fucked. So you have to be confident in your movement. An elf, yeah, you might make a mistake, but if your opponent doesn't capitalise on it, say like they didn't put them in the right place, they have such good movement with their cavalry and their infantry, because they're double the movement of dwarves, that they can compensate for their mistakes a lot more than a dwarf. Now, I have a good example for this. At a tournament, I was fighting a Tomb Kings player. I had my line, like I said, I don't play gun lines, so I had my Longbeards, and I had my hammers on the flank. Now, I moved my hammers forward slightly and wheeled them slightly, so they were looking down my line. Now, I thought they had line of sight down my line using with their arcs, but I never checked. I should have fucking checked. He charged some big ass motherfucking monsters into my lines. And I was like, fuck yes, he's done it. He's made the mistake. Or he's trying to go balls deep. So I was going to fist him in the ass. I was going to charge him at his units in the flank, because I knew my Dwarf Warriors would pin him, because they're not going to flee. They're stubborn as fuck. Like I said, they're effective. Then when it came to my turn, I was like, I'm going to counter-charge. Then I checked my arc. My vision of arc coming out the front of the unit. And they couldn't see his units by like 3 millimeters, and I'm not even fucking joking. It was tiny. But this is tournament. I didn't want to be like, "Oh, come on, bro, just give me this chance." No, this is a tournament. It was my fuck up, because I didn't check. Now, after that, it spent 2 turns getting back into position, instead of just on turn 1 ploughing through the side of his units. They cost me the game. I killed those units. I had my army left, but he killed so much more of mine because of that mistake. It lost me the battle. Now, I keep on saying that I don't play gun lines, because I don't. I think they're boring to play, they're boring to play against, and people that play gun lines don't have any experience or know how to have fun as a dwarf. Now, like I said before, I take Longbeards as my core. I usually have one unit of quarters, because dwarfs don't have the magic phase, as I've said before, so you need something to reach out and take wounds off. Now, for special, like I said, special will have the elite units like Hammerers, Ironbreakers, and Slayers. Slayers are fun, but they die too quick because they don't have armor. They're more for fluffy battles, which I've used in fluff battles. And I do tell a lie, I did actually take Slayers once to a tournament, but it was only a unit of 5 with a Demon Slayer. Now, he did do something fun and kill a Stegodon and a Basilodon from a Lizardman army in one turn, which my opponent didn't seem very happy about, but that's what happens when you fight a Demon Slayer. But in non-fluffy tournaments, actual serious tournaments, I don't take Ironbreakers, like I said, because they're the same points as a Hammerer, but they just don't cut it in the rules. They're meant to be little bricks of Gromril, yet they crumble like dust. So, tabletops, if I'm playing a fluff game, I take Ironbreakers. I've done it against Rexasaur. I take Ironbreakers. I prefer to take Ironbreakers rather than a massive block of Hammerers, because we're fighting Skaven. It's how Skaven fight. Skaven always fight Ironbreakers down in the tunnels. That's what I do. That's how I roll, right? But for tournaments, Hammerers, because they're strength 6 or fucking fury that will never run. They're stubborn. They will hammer the shit out of people. They have multiple attacks. Normal hammer has 2. The champion has 3. So anything that comes into base contact, because I ran them in hordes, would get their face smashed in. And in one tournament, I even took one of the special equipment, which is the Horn of Vengeance. The Silver Horn of Vengeance. Basically gives devastating charge to all units within 6, which is 1 extra attack. And dwarfs also on the charge get 1 extra strength. So these bad boys in horde formation, right? Charge forward, strength 7 with 3 attacks each. So the front rank has 30 attacks plus 1 for the champion. That's 31. Then the second rank is 1 attack each. Then the third rank behind that, because of horde, is 10 attacks each. That's 51 attacks at strength 7. I deleted, I think it's what was it? Oh, Temple Guard. I deleted a whole unit of Temple Guard. I think there was 40 models in that unit in 1 round of combat, because I also had rerolls because of the grudge mechanic. I had hatred, so I managed to get most of my attacks off. But I deleted that unit. Just poof, gone. With shenanigans. Dwarf shenanigans. I don't know any other army that can... I've never come up against any other army that just deletes a unit like that, with my personal experience. I've had hard hitters, bam, when they kill like 10 models, 15 models, bam, if they're lucky, smack it, kill half my unit. But my dwarfs, they just stand there because they're stubborn. Obviously other races would like flee, and then they'd get the overrun and kill the unit that way. Personally, I've never had someone come up to me and go, smash, your unit's gone. I, however, have gone up to other people and gone, that unit is not going to be there next turn. Charged, deleted the unit, and been like, where's my 10 pack? So that's what I took for specials, was Hammerers. I also take Gyrocopters, because like I said before, they're good for redirecting units and basically getting in the way of things you don't want to get into close combat with quite yet. Occasionally I take cannons because they're good for one shot shooting monsters, but I feel a bit cheap doing that. It's a bit cheap when that person goes, oh, I've got this cool looking dragon, put it on the table, and I just go, take it off please, I've just shot it with a cannon. Doesn't always happen, but most of the time it does. Because of the runes you put on there, you can make it more effective. So it seems a bit cheap. In tournaments it's necessary. I don't feel good about doing it though. That's being said. Now, rare, this is where I have to choose between either Iron Drakes or Organ Guns. Iron Drakes is another unit, like iron breakers, but they got the trait guns. Now these are short range, but they hit fucking hard. Strength 5, armor piercing, and they can move and shoot. Now these guys are good in close combat as well. Not as good as the hammers, not as good as the iron breakers, but still fucking good. They're expensive. That's the problem. So if the unit does get taken out, you've lost like 300 points for a 20-man unit with no upgrades. Yeah, it's expensive. What's an organ gun with upgrades? 2 of them is like 240. It's just under 300, I think, or maybe like 10 points over 300. Now they got a lot more range, have the same strength, armor piercing, but obviously they're war machines, so they're a bit more susceptible to shenanigans from other forces. I have had though 2 organ guns firing at units, pretty much decimate a unit to a point where I could just ignore that unit. The organ guns are, if I had to choose only one war machine from the dwarf army to ever use again, it would be organ guns. On the tabletop, I've never had anyone else. I've played against other dwarf players, and they seem to use grudge throwers a lot and cannons, not organ guns. I don't understand why. Yes, the cannon, your grudge thrower, hit harder. Like the grudge thrower center has a lot more strength than organ guns at strength 5. So against monsters and that, but the sheer volume of an organ gun, it's just immense. You don't come up against armies of fucking monsters in 8th edition. There's always units of cavalry, units of infantry around. Yeah, there's a monster here and there, but an organ gun can selectively shoot at, say like I have 2 organ guns, I can shoot at that chimera. One organ gun has the chance of taking it out, especially if I put flaming on it. It doesn't have its regeneration then. It doesn't have a save. Same as like Abomination against Skaven. Put the rune of flame fire on it. If I get, because we randomly determine how many shots it's got, so it can have between 4 to 20 shots. Now on average you'd get about 14. That's my average, 14. But like if you get 20 shots off against the Abomination, that thing's gonna die pretty much. Cause you buff the accuracy by putting runes and an engineer next to them. So organ guns, I fucking swear by organ guns. My favourite war machine. They fit dwarfs so well. It's a shame other war machines like the flame cannon and that are just useless. I wouldn't even use them in fluff scenarios because they're just fucking shite. Grudge throwers are okay. They're cheap compared to like the cannon and the organ gun, but I don't know. I just prefer organ guns. Bolt throwers are too elf-like, for my opinion, so they can fuck off. Now for heroes, like I said, sometimes I take an engineer because he boosts war machines. He basically makes them less likely to blow up from malfunction and gives them a ballistic skill increase. So sometimes I take him, but sometimes I don't, depending on what else I've got in my formation. Because it's basically between a master engineer or like a gyrocopter. There's 10 points difference in them. So do I want something to buff my war machines, or do I want a gyrocopter to stop stuff getting too close to my war machines? That's basically how I'm feeling, depending on what tournament I go to. Runesmiths are a given. They can take runes to dispel. They even have a rune, which is two runes of dispel, or 2 runes of spell breaking. Sorry, not dispel. 2 runes of spell breaking, and when I take 2 runes of spell breaking, it's expensive, but basically it acts as a dispel, and on top of that, you roll a dice. On a 4-up, that spell is gone for the rest of the game. So if someone doesn't irresistibly cast like Purple Sun, which is a deadly spell, fuck shit up. If they don't irresistibly cast it, you just go, fuck this shit, I'm using my spell breaking runes. You get rid of those 2 spell breaking runes because you can't constantly use them for the battle as a one use thing. But on a 4-up, you can get rid of that spell. So for the rest of the game, you don't have that threat. You've got rid of that threat. And I like that. I really like that. That's unique to the dwarves as well. Other races can have dispel scrolls, which just dispels a spell. The dwarves can go 1 step further if you've got the points for it. And I like that. Now, I always took one runesmith. You always want that one runesmith. And like I said, if I had one runesmith, I'd put him in the quarrelers, because he gives them armor piercing, through the Forge Fire special rule, I think it is called, and yeah, I'm pretty sure it's called. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Forge Fire, and he also gives magic resistance. Now, if I took two, the other guy would, depending on what I saw on my opponent, they would either go in the Longbeards for armor piercing on their hand weapons, which they already hit hard. But if I saw something that had incredible armor, like Chaos Warriors or something, I don't know. So like that, I put them in the Longbeards just to make sure I'm punching through that armor, just to guarantee it. Or if I didn't have that threat, I would put them in the Hammerer unit, which is the bodyguard unit for my Lord, which I'll get onto in a minute, to give magic resistance to that unit and to give that unit armor piercing. That's basically what I did with Runesmiths. That's all they are. They're just a jockey for dispelling and giving off Forge Fire, the Forge Fire special rule, which I'm pretty sure is what the rule's called. And then the only other hero, which is pretty much mandatory from me, was the Thane, because he's the battle standard. His battle standard, well, but basically he changed depending on what I felt like. But either him, not him. He would usually carry, most of the time, he would carry runic armor to keep himself, to make him more survivable, because you always want that reroll for your leadership. Even though dwarves have the best leadership in the game by far, only race, they don't go below they have no leadership below 9. They're fucking good leadership, and I can make my whole army pretty much stubborn, so I don't get any negatives to my leadership unless for spells and whatnot. There's always that chance that you roll 11 or roll a 12 on the dice, so you want to mitigate that by having a battle standard bearer, and he's worth the points. Now I face dwarf players that don't have that, and I take advantage of that, because I know that if they don't have that battle standard, they couldn't be bothered to find the points for it. Now I know the only other unit that can have the stubborn banner to make other units around it stubborn are the Hammerers, and because I know that, I'll shoot the Hammerers until they're dead. It's pretty much straight up from the top. Bang, 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 organ guns, crossbows, until I kill the whole unit. Now I know that the army's not stubborn. Dwarves don't move very fast. So by the time I get into combat, that hammer unit's gone. I get into combat, I smash in combat because I have a combat-orientated dwarf army. Compared to people that usually take gun lines, mine's more effective in combat. I'll smash in combat, I'll win the combat. They don't have the reroll, they don't have the stubborn, so now they're having modifiers to their armor, leadership. That's how I win those combats. Because even if I lose, I don't get any modifiers because they're stubborn, and I get the reroll. So they're stuck. Tar pitting, basically, with units. So that's what the Thane was for. Now, the Lord, like I've said before, a lot of people don't take Dwarf Lords. They take another Thane and use him as the general. But I take Dwarf Lords because they can have a lot more runic equipment. And this is the bit I like. They have good stats anyway, Dwarf Lords, but they get even better. The runic equipment is fucking awesome. So a Dwarf Lord, his stats are like weapon skill 7, I think, ballistic skill, can't remember, 4 or 5 probably, strength 4, toughness 5, wounds 3, initiative 4, attacks 4, leadership 10. So pretty generic. But when you put him on shield bearers, he gets an extra 2 attacks from the guys carrying him, because he's stood on top of the shield, but he also gets 2 wounds to his profile and +1 to his armor. So he's got armor of 4 plus to begin with, so he's got 3 plus armor. Now he also has 5 wounds. Now I made my Lord in various ways. Now I have a couple of Lords and their names. The first one is basically the mountain build, and the mountain build is basically making the dwarf like a dragon. You'll have the same stats as a dragon. And to do this, you go to the armor runes. You put 1 rune of fortitude, which increases his toughness by 1. and 2 runes of iron. Boom, boom, boom. He now has a toughness of 6 and 6 wounds. He now has the profile of a fucking dragon. So, to make him a bit more choppy in combat, because he's only got strength 4, you give him a great weapon. So now he's strength 6, with a toughness of 6, 6 wounds, weapon skill 7. I called that the mountain build, because he never died in combat. Ever. I took him to tournaments many times. He is the mountain. He's everlasting, ever enduring, unbreakable. He never broke in combat, never quitted, never died. He's claimed the heads of vampire lords, fucking chaos demons, chaos lords, orcs, many orcs, a lot of savage orcs. Fucking, he's never lost a duel ever, never come close. The only threat to him were like vampires. Vampire lords are quite killy as well, but in tournaments, no fucking chance. My dwarf lord has a fucking kill to death ratio of like fucking 13-0. He's like 14-0 in duels, mind, not in wounds. That's one build. Then I have another build, which is, let me remember now. I can't remember the name I gave this build. Oh yeah, I can. Kamehameha. Basically, you've got 2 runes of fire, which gives him a fire attack on his weapon, and a breath weapon, which is important. And then the fiery ring of Fori. Now those are the 2 main bits of that. The rest of the equipment, you can choose what you wanted. But now this was when I was derping around at tournaments, when I knew I was good at playing dwarfs, right? So I had this as a derp guy. Now, when he gets into combat, I can unleash these 2 breath weapons for 4d6 strength 4 hits on a unit, which I found quite hilarious when I used it, because I used it against Skaven and various other weak races like elves when it comes to toughness. So I would stand up and proclaim to my opponent, Kamehameha. He would wonder what the fuck's going on. Then I would explain to him that my dwarf has now just killed like 10, 12 guys with 2 flamethrowers out of each hand. That was one of the derp things I did with my character. Now the other one was basically, I had 2 versions of this last lord, but I had a couple of versions of the last lord. He's called the Hulk build, basically. He smashes stuff. Now, one build of this was using the Master Rune of Snorri Spangleham, a Master Rune of Might, and a Master Rune of Fury, which basically the Fury gives him 1 extra attack. The Snorri Spangleham rune makes sure he always hits on a 2+ regardless, and Might doubled his strength if his opponent's toughness was 5. Now this guy was a duelist specialist, not against elves. Against chaos and various other things like that, because I think vampires are toughness 5 as well. This is where this guy comes into his own, because he would be strength 10, smashing this fucker. He just smashed. Got 1 extra attack, 5 attacks, bam, 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 get the fuck out. The only other runes I put on that lord is 3 runes of warding, which gives him a ward save of 4 plus ward save, and the rune of stone, which increases his armor, so he's got like a 1+ armor save. He smashes bitches up. Now I got another one of this, which is similar, but I don't have the Fury, and I don't have the Spingelhelm on, and I don't have stone, I think, but I have 2 runes of Might, so he doubles his strength when he's your opponent's toughness 5. So he's strength 8 or strength 10 on a charge, because that's how he played it at tournaments. Now the second effect, if you've got 2 runes of Might, he does D3 wounds for every wound. So like I said, sometimes vampires can be quite annoying to kill, and so can fucking demon lords and that. Sometimes I get into combat and I go smash, 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 hit with all my attacks, hit with all my wounds, and somehow they saved through ward save or whatnot, and they didn't die. They had one wound left, and I'd be like, fuck. Now I'm stuck in this duel, or I'm stuck in this fucking combat, and I can't accomplish my fucking goal because of that one fucking wound. So I got annoyed at that one tournament, so I decided to put 2 runes of might on there, so I don't hit as often because I'm not getting the guaranteed 2+ hits, and I haven't got 5 attacks, I've only got 4. But now I'm doing D3 multiple wounds. So every wound I get through, I roll a dice, I halve it, and that's how many wounds I do. So this guy also become sort of a specialized killer, especially in monsters, and especially with monsters because of the low like weapon skill. But also against vampire accounts and that, where they'd be like, ha 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 ha, you've only got 2 runes through. And I'd be like, bitch please, roll 2 dice, get a 5 and a 6 on those dice. And I'd be like, that's fucking 6 runes, mate, take them off. And they'd be like, what the fuck? So that's the 2 variations of that. And that's basically how I like to run my lord. Either those 2 variations, the Kamehameha one or the mountain one, which is what my mate Nixon named him because he cut blocked over a table at a tournament, and he was on his own on the flank fighting off 2 units of Dark Elf Witch Hunters and a Dark Elf Lord. I can't remember what they're fucking called on the fucking Pegasus, and he was just stood there for the whole game beating the shit out of elves because that's what dwarves are good at. So yeah, this is rambled on for fucking ages. It's probably like fucking 40 minutes by the time I fucking finish this and edit this. All I can say is sorry about that. But yeah, that's basic fluff, and there's a lot more stuff when it comes to tactics that I could go into. With dwarfs, I'm experienced. I'm not experienced as some other people at tournaments. They had a lot more out there, but I found quite quickly as a dwarf player in the minimal amount of tournaments I went to, because I got into the last edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle quite late, the tournament scene, not the actual game, but the tournament scene. I found quite quickly I'm quite good. I was quite good at the tabletop, not top good, because dwarfs are not. If you play dwarfs, you're not expected to win tournaments. They're chaos, and that are expected to win tournaments because they do better against every single army. However, I was good at playing dwarfs, so when I fought against unit armies that you were usually on top tables, I usually did quite well, and my opponent was quite surprised because I understood the philosophy of dwarven warfare in close combat. They'd also be quite surprised because they'd rock up to the table thinking there was going to be a gun line, and then I'd be like, no mate, I'm not a dick. I'm not deploying in the corner. I'm going to be in your face as soon as my tiny little legs run over that table. So yeah, that's a brief overview of a bit of the history and a bit of the tabletop tactics. And I know this is late. I know loads of people have done videos on Total Warhammer and the fucking lore and that, but they annoyed me with some of the things they said, basically, especially when it comes to the tactics, because some of these people that know the lore and play the game at their clubs, which is fine to play it fluff wise and to play it at your clubs, but unless you play it competitively, you don't understand true dwarven tactics and the ethos of these slow, badass midgets of fury. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this probably like fucking hour long ramble, but this is my overview of the dwarves, and I'm looking forward to Total Warhammer. Thank you for listening. If you listened this far, you've probably got blood coming out your ears and vomit on your trousers. I'm sorry about that, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Ta-ta.